Chair recognizes the member for Fox Hill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm certainly appreciate the member for Golden Isles, his intervention, and the Right Honourable Prime Minister, because the issue around the Bank of the Bahamas, which continues to confound us, you know, as politicians, we look to see what is the strategy of an organization. Well, what is the strategy of an organization? Why the continued dialogue about the Bank of the Bahamas, when the only end result of all of this drumbeat about the Bank of the Bahamas is to drive the bank into bankruptcy. And all the shareholders lose their value, their deposits, and all the trouble that causes, and the knock-on effects in the economy. So the question we ask ourselves is, what interest does an opposition party have in driving the bank into bankruptcy? That's the question we ask. You listed half a dozen questions, but we keep trying to ask ourselves, why would you want to drive a bank into bankruptcy? Why? What sense does that make? No matter what the history of what happened and who did what.
The boys line up, and I will get the money in the bag ready.
Then,
Member for Fox Hill has the floor.
the question of value-added tax and the Bahamas Electricity Corporation. Now, people can argue and divide over whether VAT should have been applied to this or applied to that.
Time is moving.
It's not a point of order. I've begun to speak. Yeah, I'm saying you raised these in your debate, and I'm seeking to respond to those issues. The question of VAT, value-added tax. You can divide on whether it should be or it shouldn't be, but you know, value-added tax is a very technical thing. I am actually was always concerned during the general debate why most consumers were interested in this, apart from the point at which they are involved, which is at the point of sale. But people wanted to get all involved in all the complications about how you figure this out and figure that out, so on and so forth. When for most of us, it's just like going to Walmart. You know, plenty of people go to Walmart, pay the bill. There's a, what is it, 8 cents, a sales tax? And that's the only thing that happens with a consumer. Now, if you check with your own experts on VAT, and the reasons why VAT has been applied to the electricity bill, they can explain to you that notwithstanding what it appears on the surface is that the bills for electricity would in fact be higher if BEC were exempted from VAT, as strange as that seems, because the Electricity Corporation would not be able to claim back all of the previous inputs into the tax, as strange as that seems, and it's very complicated. So we try to keep, what you're trying to do is to scare the public again about VAT. No, you can chuckle if you like, but the point is, it is a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue. And what you're trying to do is to try and frighten and confuse the public over something. Why not just get up and say, no, well, precisely, the 1st of January is passed. It's done. Instead of saying the government did a good job in managing the introduction of a tax, in bringing something that is very difficult to do, in helping to save our economy, to bring the debt down, none of which you had the courage to do. Instead of saying congratulations, you want to just pick and pick and pick and create problems where there are none.
Don't expect them to do that.
No, I'm speaking to the member for East Grand Bahama.
The chair would prefer you to speak to the chair. Members, yeah.
Through the chair to the member for East Grand Bahama, not to those mumbling on the side. Mr. Speaker, light bulbs. Talking about the light bulbs, I think the Member of Parliament for the Honourable Minister for the Environment, the point he was raising about the light bulbs was the use of the Royal Bahamas Defence Force to give out light bulbs. That's the point he was making, not that the light bulbs weren't effective or any of those other things. But can you misallocate resources by using the Defence Force to give out light bulbs? It's not spin, it's a fact. Those are the facts. You use the Defense Force to give out light bulbs when they should be defending the country. That's the fact. That's the fact. All right, I support this legislation, Mr. Speaker. And I want to say that one of the statements I remember about energy and energy costs is that at a Chamber of Commerce dinner, where my friend Henry Dean was being named Developing Entrepreneur of the Year in 1995, a former Treasury Secretary of the United States, Nick Brady, who lives out in Lyford Key, spoke. And he said, you cannot develop your economy without a reliable source of electricity. And I think Bahamians know instinctively that that is correct. You just have to ask all those who cuss every time the power goes off in this country. The problem is, I do not remember a time when the power has not gone off in this country. And it doesn't matter which government has been in office. From the UEP was in power, the power goes off. And none of us have been able to solve it. So, this government is now in and is trying to do the heavy lifting again to make a reliable power supply a reality in this country. It's left to us to try and solve it. We have that brand new hotel coming up, which places enormous power demands on us, and we have to find a way to meet the power needs. And you cannot have another summer sweating in discontent. Finally, sir, it appears that the United States is engaged in helping us seek a solution to this. In connection with their input, the United States Vice President Joe Biden is convening an energy summit in Washington, D.C. on the 26th of January. And our Prime Minister, in his capacity as chair of CARICOM and in his own right as head of the Bahamas, will be making a statement at that conference and attending the conference and meeting with Mr. Biden. We welcome the engagement of the United States in this matter. In particular, we hope that this will lead to changes in policies by that country to enable cheaper access to energy supplies. We know, for example, or have been told, that when investors come to the Bahamas, and in particular to Grand Bahama, they love the place, everything is fine, until they hear what the cost of power is. And then the trail goes cold. When you compare, and I just had the statistics pulled on this, the cost of producing power in the Bahamas compared to other countries, you'll see the point. I'm told that the average cost is 40 cents per kilowatt hour in the Bahamas. In Canada, it's 8 cents. China is 11 cents. The United States is 12 cents. And Trinidad and Tobago is 7 cents. So that's what we're competing against. And most of the Caribbean, with the exception of Trinidad, are between 32 cents per kilowatt hour, and there's a high of 44 cents per kilowatt hour in Dominica. So power is very expensive compared to these other countries. Now, the U.S., the U.K., and other partners have criticized the CARICOM region for embracing Petrocaribe, a marketing program by the Venezuelan government to sell petroleum to CARICOM countries with extended credit. And here's how it works. Venezuela has said that the market price of oil, when it exceeds, I believe, $60 per barrel, they will offer to CARICOM countries the balance of the bill. So if oil at one point was $100 per barrel, when the bill is $60, that means that you have to pay the $60, but $40 of it will be extended to you in the form of a credit, which you pay back over 25 years at 2% interest. And during the days of Chavez, they were allowing it to be done in kind. Now, the difficulty is Venezuela itself is running into some cash problems. And we know, for example, or have been told recently, that when investors came to the Bahamas and that recently Venezuela has been asking for cash, not kind, and they recently discounted their credit note. The government of the Dominican Republic owes monies, and they've sold that note to a private sector. I'm not sure whether they're credit agency or equity agency, but the note has been discounted and sold. So countries in the Caribbean region are now watching this very carefully, because once you get into the hands of a private debt collector, you're dealing with a different situation. We all know what's happening with Argentina at the moment with regard to debt payments in the United States of America. What the bill then is designed to do is to give consumers the ability to join the grid by, in part, supplying their own power. And hopefully this allows the individual consumer to have less of an electricity bill than if he were dependent or she were entirely dependent on the Bahamas Electricity Corporation. Power, Mr. Speaker, will be one of the major determinants about the success or failure of CARICOM economies, including our own. It is most important that we resolve this problem. One area is renewables. That's a clear answer. And at the moment, there is some relief because the prices on the world market have declined dramatically in the last 6 months. But of course, we don't know how long that is going to last. And some people have been saying, in fact, that this is politically driven in the sense that with the Russians in a problem with the West and Russia's economy being dependent on petroleum, that if the prices are driven down, that this causes a further problem for Russia. And I can tell you that the most recent meeting that we chaired in Guyana of the Community Council was a very sobering one, because up to now, the only economy in the CARICOM region that was not, in fact, suffering over this issue was that of Trinidad and Tobago. But in recent weeks, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has announced that its projects are now frozen. They have to recalculate all of their income based on the fact that the price of oil has fallen so dramatically. So I think their revenues were based on $70 a barrel, and now oil is more like $45 a barrel. And so billions of dollars have to be shaved from the Trinidad government in government's budget in midstream. Projects are being cut in every ministry as a result of the shrinking revenues which they now expect. So Trinidad has joined the others of us that have to be very concerned about what is coming in as revenue. So the American engagement at this point is welcome, because there needs to be focused energy placed on this, resolving this problem for the Caribbean. Given that all of the inputs for the production of energy are imported from outside the region. Now, the major thing that I think countries are hoping, Mr. Speaker, is that at the moment, the American rules do not permit the export of natural gas from the United States without a special license from the U.S. government. And foreign countries are not able to get those licenses. I think this was explored at one point when the company in Grand Bahama was thinking about switching to natural gas. And we in the ministry were approached about the possibility of approaching the Americans to get a special license to export natural gas from the United States directly into Freeport, with Florida being so close. But at the moment, the present rules don't apply. So I think CARICOM countries are all looking at switching to natural gas, because that's one of the ways we're advised that you can cut the cost of generating electricity by about 30% once you are able to meet the capital costs. So the question is, where would you get your supply of natural gas? Trinidad, of course, is a big producer of natural gas. The question is, for us, of course, is the transportation cost of bringing natural gas from Trinidad up here to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But certainly for the countries in the Eastern Caribbean and even perhaps as far north as Jamaica, Trinidad may be the natural market for production of natural gas. So at this meeting, Caribbean countries will be seeking to engage the United States on this goal of how do we reduce power cost, electricity generating cost, and what the United States can do specifically to assist countries in this region with driving down the cost of electricity. I think it will be a very valued and useful experience. I think more generally, this is the second meeting with the U.S. Vice President. I think more generally, the optics of the engagement of the region with the United States is a good one. The United States is also, as you know, a major contributor to the World Bank, and the idea is for the World Bank to also focus its energies toward the Caribbean and what it can do to assist in this area. The meeting will help to create a high-level sense of engagement with the U.S. and the region, particularly regarding the notion that CARICOM should not be subject to the vagaries of oil markets, governments, and oil suppliers, and towards an outcome of cheaper, safer, more reliable energy resources for the region based on market mechanisms. Now, I think that's the point of political disagreement that we've had to hear from developed countries, at least those who embraced Petrocaribe in this region. And you know, Petrocaribe, as I said, is essentially a credit arrangement. So it is our hope that coming out of this, we're able to make the case for the Caribbean, to propose ideas to make us less dependent on hydrocarbons and to make our energy sources cheaper, to bring attention to the needs of the region and to find ways of making its inputs cheaper to produce. At this time, as I said, we have a welcome relief in cheaper prices, and to ensure that what happens on the energy field helps to make our countries produce more for the benefit of our people. I would like to also say that in terms of renewables, one of the knock-on effects also that they're arguing is that, and some people see a conspiracy in this, in that with the price of oil going down to, I think the Saudis are now saying that they would allow it to go down as far as $25 per barrel. That makes going into renewables less attractive, because the cost of renewables is so expensive that is the reason why people are thinking about renewables, because it makes sense given the cost of oil against renewables. But when the price falls so low, you lose your appetite to go into renewables. And of course, as a marketing strategy, you forget renewables and continue to be dependent on hydrocarbons. And so therefore people are saying in the long run, once you drop the renewables, then the price will start inching up again for those people who've abandoned renewables. And so in the long term, it is still, the view is, it is still in the best interests of our countries in this region, given the lack of resources that we have in that direction. It is still in the best interest of this region to continue to go in the long term into renewables. And I believe that is the message that, that will be present at the exchange which we anticipate taking place in the United States on Monday. I wanted simply to share that information, Mr. Speaker, with the wider public, and wish the Prime Minister well in his mission to Washington on Monday. So I thank you, and I support the bill.